So what I'd like to do this week is to move on in our exploration of meditation, and also add to this conversation around how do we unplug from the mind. I think we've seen that it's not something that we can stop. In fact, the more we try to stop it, as we spoke about that horse in the very small corral, it's going to buck. So if anything, we have to give it a wide berth. And so this week, what I wanted to speak about is how to relate to sensation in the body, and how relating to sensation can be, one, a means of giving our attention to something different than the mind, right? And also how relating to sensation can be a doorway into greater and greater intuition, greater and greater awareness of what's actually going on. And also, one of the things that I've found is that anytime sensations are coming up in the body, and these could be physical sensations, emotional sensations, or energetic sensations. Anytime something difficult arises in the body, there's a tendency to kind of bounce off of that and go straight up into a lot of thinking. So what happens for a lot of us, because we have been conditioned to live from our mind's interpretation of things, is that most of our time is spent in our head. A lot of us don't really spend a lot of time checking into our body, as I just had us do. Of course, it was very kind of a methodical thing, and that's not really what's expected. But I think if you watch animals, for example, they're very much in their whole being, right? There's not a lot of thinking going on. They're getting a lot of information from the rest of their body. And I think that can be a very beneficial thing on the spiritual journey. I also think that there's been a lot of teachings around forgetting about the body, like the body is impure, or it doesn't belong in talks about spirituality. But I believe that it's a gift, and it's also a tremendous source of information that we wouldn't otherwise have access to. I'm talking about intuitive information. And as we go deeper into the body, it becomes a direct contact with the soul. So let me just back up a little bit. As I was mentioning, a lot of us live up in the head, and there's a few reasons for that. One, we've been conditioned to use our mind to interpret things, but also because we have been taught or modeled that certain feelings in the body are not okay through our parents and whatnot. As we start to repress more and more of our feelings, the body becomes a kind of messy place to really give our attention to. Like when we do go below the neck, we encounter sadness, we encounter anger, we encounter tension, so it just piles up. It's like a garbage bin, really. It's just piled up with so much stuff that we just kind of retreat back into the head. It's sort of like your body is a home that you've owned, but you went off to Europe for a while and you came back 3 years later and nobody's been in there. And you open the door and it's going to be full of cobwebs and dust and who knows what else is going, animal excrement and whatnot. And so when we don't spend time in the body, things tend to build up. So one thing is sort of feeding the other. So we live in our heads because we don't like the sensations in our body. But when we live in our heads, the sensations in the body just keep piling up, and it gets more and more difficult to begin to spend more time in it. So part of the practice that I'm going to be encouraging this week is to spend time in your meditations and in your daily life, dropping your attention below the head. And it's something you just have to kind of do on purpose, even though it might be difficult at first because you might sense things that um, that you would prefer not to sense, but it's kind of part of the process that we have to go through in order to really begin to embody more and to land more deeply in our being. It's just like, again, that house thing. You just have to start cleaning. It doesn't matter where you start, you just have to start. Um, and so I'm hoping to share with you some ways in which you can um, relate to what it is that you will find in your body as you begin to spend more time with it. So when we drop our attention into the world of sensation, uh, and it includes sensation in the head, of course, um, there are kind of 3 levels of sensation that I want to speak about. So the first level is the gross sensations. So today, as I took you through that first meditation, I was primarily relating to the gross sensations. So it's the sensation of, your body resting on something solid, or it's the sensation of your clothes on your skin, or your hair on your skin, your glasses resting on your nose. It could be the sensation of digestion, particularly if you're getting strong, like, I don't know, bloating or um, um, whatever pain in the digestive system, or if you have pain in a joint. So that's what I'm referring to when I speak about the gross sensations. And then as we go deeper into the body, the next level of sensations that we will encounter are those sensations that are related to our emotions and feelings. So they're not as strong as the gross sensations, but sometimes they can still be pretty strong. Um, and other times they're more subtle, right? So there are sensations in our body related to every emotion or feeling in the gamut. The reason we can call something sadness is because our culture as a whole has agreed that heaviness in the heart, that has this very specific feeling to it, and we must all feel it because we're all calling it the same thing, and we agree when we feel it, that sensation um, is what we call sadness, and it lives in the chest, say. Um, Jealousy has a different sensation. It might be a kind of a clenching in the gut. Guilt, we know how to name guilt just like that, and we don't mistake it with sadness or anger, right? So there's distinct feelings associated with each emotion. And what I would like us to do today, and also as we move forward, particularly this week, we're going to practice it, is to begin to get to know how different emotions register in our body, where they live, how they move, um, how they change when we spend time with them, how they build, how they kind of, oftentimes there's kind of a surge with an emotion, but there's also a pressure against it. There's kind of this, what we might call resistance against it as well. So I'll be taking you through a meditation in a moment to kind of help us to experience this. But I just wanted to mention that that's kind of when we go from gross and then in closer, there's this whole range of subtle sensations that are related to the emotions that we feel, the stress that we feel. And they can be felt anywhere in the body, but oftentimes they are felt down the center line of the body, and also those typical places like the shoulders or pressure in the head and whatnot as well. So why is it important to learn to get to know the sensations related to feelings? Because If we don't, then what happens is that these feelings will likely just stay stuck in our body. So the emotions that are living in our body, that have not had a chance to really move their way through and out, are there because on some level we have learned that it's not okay for us to feel these things. Either we're ashamed of them, or we had some trauma around them, or we just weren't encouraged to feel them as little ones. And so we began to kind of pack them into these tight little places in our body. Um, and they just live there. And instead of being this movement of energy, the emotion becomes this circular pattern or this compact pattern that just stays in the body. And what I've found is that, and I'm sure others have found too, is that when we begin to bring our attention to these areas of emotion in the body, it's literally like we're giving it the permission to exist. As long as we ignore it, it stays hidden. When we begin to bring our attention to feelings and emotions and in a very open and curious way, um, as we'll see, and maybe you've already seen, it liberates the emotion. So that's why this is a very, very important practice. It helps us to let go of some of the resistance that we might have created around our emotions, and it liberates that energy, which then puts us back into flow with our soul. And beyond that, um, um, we're going to be looking also at the more subtle energies even than the emotional energies. So when you go deeper into the emotional energies, you begin to notice this very fine energy that's beyond the label of any emotion, that often will live in the center line of the body, but also can be felt in the arms and the legs, the fingers, the feet, the head, etc. I mean, every tissue in the body you can feel energy. And so we're going to become more and more masterful at being present with these subtler energies, because they too, they're actually what the emotions are made of. But the cool thing about going into the subtle energies is that we begin to kind of take the label off of emotions, and now we're just feeling the life force moving through our system and helping it, liberating it through our presence and our attention. So I think what I'd like to do is to demonstrate that with a little bit of a guided meditation, so that we can begin to experience what it is that I'm saying here and what I'm pointing to. This is an extremely important practice, I find, to us as individuals, but also every soul coaching session I do, I'm going through this process in one way or another. Um, so yeah, so we'll do a little bit of a guided meditation and go from there. Okay, great. All right. So yeah, so just close your eyes when you're ready. And yeah, I feel like we're all pretty much there in our bodies right now. So maybe just take a moment to bring your attention to the lower half of your body and notice how it's resting on your seat. The places where your body touches your chair. just your weight dropping down into gravity. And then bring your attention to your low belly. And just let it rest there for a little bit. Being with the sensations related to the breath moving in and out. Feeling the organs sort of being hugged by that inhale. And then spilling into the abdominal cavity in the exhale when the pressure is less. Great. And so you're probably noticing already that the mind may have tried to get your attention. And so for now, we're just going to leave the mind alone. And we're going to continue to bring our attention again and again to the world of sensation with my guidance. So it takes, particularly at the beginning, it takes a certain amount of maybe discipline, maybe a willingness to really explore your body, a curiosity about what it is that your body wants to reveal to you. But it's just so tempting, and it's such a habit to withdraw into the mind that we really have to be persistent at first and gentle. So here we are in the belly, and at first it's very helpful to just stay with the sensation of the breath in the low belly for a little bit until you feel sort of more anchored in your physicality. And sometimes that could be the whole meditation, and that's fine. But at the very least, at the beginning of the meditation, it's extremely helpful to just drop attention deep in the gut and to just anchor it there. One image that might work for you is imagining a stone dropping gently through the top of your head and making its way down slowly, 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 slowly into the floor of the pelvis. And so you kind of have that image of this stone and the weight of the stone settling there on the floor of the pelvis. And around its stillness, the breath is moving. And you might even feel, that weight there on the floor of the pelvis. And if attention gets drawn away to thoughts, you just catch that as soon as you do and gently bring your attention back down to the pelvis, to the breath, to the deep stillness there. Great. So then what I'd like you to do is to call to mind something in recent days that was somewhat challenging for you. Just any event, any relationship, any circumstance in your life that was challenging for you. And maybe not choose a 10 out of 10, but somewhere between a 5 and an 8 would be a good place to start. And at the same time, just trust whatever comes forward. So as you call this situation to mind, allow yourself to see in the circumstance, maybe the person that you're relating to, or the people. And maybe even as you do that, you'll get kind of flashbacks of a recent time when this situation was triggering feelings in you, triggering stress. So allow it to do that. I'm actually trying to recreate the feelings in your body here. Yeah. So notice how, notice where the gross sensations are activated here. Like notice maybe how your breath changes, or if some obvious tension kind of gets created in the shoulders or the hands or the jaw or any of your joints or the belly. Okay? Maybe even notice kind of that sensation of the whole body kind of contracting inwards, right? So you want to notice this. So this is very important here, is to open to whatever the response of the body is. So this is a complete reorientation of our tendency to grasp at pleasurable things and to reject or push away things that are difficult. But in all the great traditions, we're told that we need to walk the middle way, which is basically acknowledging everything. And so you're going to go counter maybe to your conditioning at first, when you just bring attention to the tensions that are created in your body in the situation. And you're doing so with as much curiosity and openness and a willingness to give the sensations and the body the benefit of the doubt. So you're letting go of good, bad, should be here, shouldn't be here. And instead, you're just noticing, oh, tension in my shoulders, contraction in my gut. And there's just this kind of curiosity and availability for what is showing up. Because the body is speaking to you through these sensations. And if you have a friend or a partner or anybody close in your life, and you're only willing to hear the pleasant things they have to say, I think we can well imagine that that relationship will never really deepen, never really be trusting. So we have to open ourselves up to all of the ways in which the body communicates with us. And there's tremendous gifts to that, which we will learn as we go through this course. So already, as you have brought your attention to the gross sensations that occur in your body as a result of this situation, do you notice that they've changed? Have they softened a little bit? Has the body let down a little bit? So we can experience for ourselves that actually giving our attention to tension in the body or to stress patterns in the body if we do so with openness, with kindness, with humility, it doesn't feed the tension, it actually helps it to relax. Everyone and everything wants to be seen and acknowledged. Because if something is appearing in our reality, it's important, it's sacred. Right. So now notice if there's any feelings or emotions that you can locate or identify in your body related to this situation. So these are going to be a little bit subtler than the gross sensations that we just visited. It could be a feeling in your heart, the solar plexus, the throat. These are three common areas where we feel emotion. But it could be elsewhere too. And maybe your system has already kind of labeled that emotion as anger or anxiety or fear. And that's okay. That's good. That's a really good first step. Great, good. So here we are. We're giving some space to whatever emotion that you're feeling in the situation. And we're leaning out of it a little bit. We're finding that place in us that doesn't make it wrong for being here. We're even accessing that possibility that this feeling, this emotion is showing up, not to make our life difficult, but to make our life better. That it's showing up and coming to the surface because it wants to be liberated, it wants to be freed. That this anxiety, this sadness, or this fear was already living in our body. It just happened to be excavated by this particular situation. It wasn't created by the situation. It was brought to the surface. Why? Because it wants to be free. Why? Because as it frees itself, it clears any obscurations to our soul. It frees up our energy body so that we feel more healthy and vital. So notice if that has changed your experience of this emotion. And just notice how the mind wants to keep telling stories about it, and that's okay, right? But just stay with the sensation. You might even want to just thank the mind, say, thank you for your perspective. I'm just tending to this sensation right now, to this emotion, to this feeling. Great. And then what I would like you to do is to just peel whatever label you've put on this feeling. So not only are we peeling away the stories, but we're also peeling away what we call this feeling. So that all that we're left with is a very subtle sensation. And this is where we get to the level of the energy. So we're just letting ourselves go to the place where the energy feels the strongest. Again, it's often down the center line of the body because, as we'll see, this is where the chakras are, and they're the main digesters and processors and integrators of emotional energy and subtle energies. So I'm feeling in the field right now a fair bit of throat. Was feeling a fair bit of heart, but that seems to be calming down or settling down. And also the brow, I just feel some pressure in the forehead, and I'm assuming I'm feeling our shared field here. And so we're just watching all of this happening. The system is doing it all on its own. But basically, we've given it permission. We've given it permission to clean house. And it does it on its own. That's where the metaphor of the dirty house ends, because that we have to clean ourselves. But the energy body actually is already programmed to be self-cleaning. But we just have to stop resisting. And what we've just done here, just bringing our presence and coming forward with enough goodwill to give whatever we're feeling, whatever we're sensing, the benefit of the doubt. And you may notice that the system is beginning to feel lighter. Some of you may be noticing tingling down the arms and the legs as the energy begins to move more freely through the whole system. Maybe you feel a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more harmonious inside. Not only that, when you think again, once again, about that situation that we brought forward in the first place, you may have a different perspective. You might have a little bit more of a bird's eye view so that you can see more of the picture and you're less attached to a particular viewpoint. You might even have some understanding or some compassion, some love showing up. Great. So whenever you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. Okay. Well, I hope that was a positive experience for you. And essentially, when we have challenges in our life that bring us stress, oftentimes the mind gets very active trying to find solutions or trying to find a story that feels relatively acceptable to it, right? And that can go on for a long, long time. Or when we're in a conflict with someone, we can talk from the level of the mind, and it just seems to never really get solved. So what we did here is we dropped beneath all of the mind's attempts, and we went into the different levels of the body, and slowly but surely made our way more deeply, because these different levels take us more deeply into our being, and we access that place in our being that is in acceptance with the way things are, and that's able to have a broader perspective, a wiser perspective, a more loving perspective, a more compassionate perspective, just naturally, not because it's telling itself to do that, but because our being is wise and loving and compassionate. And so we get to see our stresses not as a problem per se, but as a means to turn inwards and to access a more evolved version of ourselves. And only the body can take you on that journey. The mind is not able to do that. And so this week I'm going to be encouraging you to practice that in meditation, to drop beneath the mind, to center in the belly, maybe with the breath for a while, maybe using that image of the stone dropping in the belly, and then beginning to just visit the body, the emotions and the subtle energies. And of course, you'll have this meditation that you can listen to and practice with. I want to open it up to questions. Yeah, we have some time. So go ahead and either raise your hand or write questions in the chat bar. And as you do that, I'm just going to talk about some principles that I think are important to keep in mind when you're doing this kind of inner work. So the first one is that all that we're doing when we drop into the body is we're acknowledging what we are noticing. We're acknowledging, right? So when you drop in, something comes into your awareness, right? So the first thing that came into your awareness when I asked you to drop into your body, for some of you, it might have been your shoulders. For some of you, it might have been clenching in your gut. So you just acknowledge that. And as you acknowledge the tension in your shoulders, then maybe something else shows up to be acknowledged, and something else, and something else. So it's an acknowledging, and it's also an including, right? So it's not so much of a focusing. Okay, I'm focusing on my shoulders now, which can sometimes be kind of your attempt to control or to understand. Usually when that focusing comes in, when we're doing this type of work, there's an element of control. So to notice that, acknowledging feels a little bit more broad, it feels more spacious, it feels more relaxed in the mind. And then we include and include and include and include. So it's this process of including. It's not, I acknowledge the shoulder, then I leave that alone, and I acknowledge the belly, and then I leave that alone, I acknowledge. It's like, oh, I acknowledge the shoulder, and I can just keep part of my awareness there, and I expand to include the belly or the chest or whatever. So it's this process of constant inclusion. And the other thing too is that we want to experience the sensations directly. We want to experience them raw. So a lot of times we go into this exercise with great intentions, but before you know it, we find ourselves telling stories about the sensations. So just be aware of that. Be aware of when you're spinning off of the sensations that you're encountering and now telling stories, and then that's fine. The mind's doing what it's doing, and then you go back down into the sensing.